What do you hang on to? What balls you up inside? Maybe clouds your thinking, closes your heart. What is it that you hold on to? Today we begin week 3 of our message series called Just Let Go. And isn't it true that all of us in some way struggle with something that we just can't let go? Maybe it's your political leanings, overscheduling, having the most followers on social media, keeping abreast of the latest technology. Something is always vying for our attention, distracting us. Each of us holds on to something that gets in the way of our relationship with God. If we could learn how to relax that grip just a little, the quality of that relationship could improve. And that's what this message series is about. Just let go. Last week, we talked about letting go of our idea of what a successful life looked like. Jesus said that a great life is in serving others. Today, we look at our image, what others think about us, and what we want others to think of us. It's about what we do to shape our image, the lengths we'll go to achieve and maintain it. What do you do to exaggerate your image? Your bench press? How many steps you took today? How many followers you have? Photoshop your posts online. Have you ever spent money on things you don't need just to impress people you don't like? And you young folks, middle schoolers and high schoolers, in our who's got the most stuff world, it's hard not to worry about what people think of you. And we adults must be especially sensitive to the challenges that our students face. But understand, if you're trying to impress people because they don't like the way you look, the way you dress, or what you don't have, just remember, years from now, you won't even remember their name. And how about we adults? What do we do to try to impress others? Stay at the office later than everyone else? Answering emails in the wee hours of the morning? Throwing the coolest parties for your children or grandchildren? Posting your latest vacation photos? This is not to say that we don't need to market ourselves, to show ourselves in the best light. All of us should value the good opinion of others, but we can get way too obsessed with it. Human opinion is fleeting. It's also a snare. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 29, it says, "The fear of what others think of you is a trap." It's a trap. So how do we stop worrying about our image? Well, let's look at today's passage from the Gospel of Mark. As Jesus was leaving Jericho with his disciples, Bartimaeus, a blind man, son of Timaeus, sat by the roadside begging. Jericho Jericho, one of the oldest cities in the world, was also a very wealthy city. Pilgrims traveling to Jerusalem from Galilee and northern Israel would typically stop there. It had a thriving tourism industry. Now, because of this episode took place during the high season, the busy season, as they passed through the city gates, Jesus and his crew came upon a beggar. It was Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus had to beg. There was no other way for a blind man to make a living. He was destitute and completely dependent on the charity of others. Mark's gospel goes on to say, on hearing that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to cry out and say, Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me. Bartimaeus hears that Jesus is passing by. Bartimaeus must have heard of Jesus. And now he's trying to get his attention in this huge crowd. He can't go to him because he can't see him. So he just shouts, Son of David, have pity on me. Son of David is a messianic title. It meant that Bartimaeus, blind though he was, recognized Jesus for what he truly is. Jesus either didn't hear him or just doesn't answer right away. And we continue in Mark's gospel, and it says, many rebuked him, telling him to be silent. As Bartimaeus calls out to Jesus, the people in the crowd shush him. Be quiet. Why? Maybe they just found him annoying. But it's clear they don't care about him. They just want him to stop shouting. Now, if our friend Bartimaeus cared, if he was worried about his image, he would have kept quiet and then lost out on the greatest opportunity of his life. But he kept calling out, Son of David, have pity on me. Persistence. Persistence. Persistent prayer is powerful. And Jesus stopped and called him. He said, call him. Now, note that Bartimaeus was probably not the only beggar at the gates that day. But he was the only one who persistently presented his prayer to Jesus. So the crowd called to him, to the blind man, saying to him, take courage, get up. Jesus is calling you. The same crowd who'd been so dismissive now show interest because Jesus has noticed him. Crowds can be fickle. We can be unpopular one minute and the center of attention the next. So what does he do? Bartimaeus, throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Now, throwing off his cloak, this is important. The cloak was the way he made his money. He would throw it in front of himself, and people would throw coins in it as he begged. So throwing off his cloak, he would have lost his wages for that day. what does he do? He throws off his cloak anyway. Throws it aside. It's a sign that Jesus could heal him. He believed, and that his life would now be different. Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" Imagine the apostles. They're probably thinking, Jesus, he's blind. What do you think he wants? And of course Jesus knows, but he wants to hear it from the blind man. Last week, this is exactly the question posed to the apostles James and John, who seek a favor. Jesus says, "What do you want?" Again, this is important. Before Jesus will act, he wants us to be specific. He wants us to be specific in our prayer. Specific about what we want. And Bartimaeus answers, "Master, I want to see." The irony is that even though he's physically blind, spiritually, he could see that Jesus was Master and Messiah. He could see even though the others with sight could not. And since the blind man sees so clearly, Jesus matches his physical condition with his spiritual one. Again, in the gospel, Jesus told him, "Go your way, your faith has saved you." Immediately he received his sight and followed him on the way. Bartimaeus becomes a disciple. He becomes now a follower of Jesus. My sisters and brothers, when we're focused on our image, we follow the crowd instead of Jesus. And following the crowd, well, that doesn't get us where we want to go. Remember, the crowd is fickle. The crowd doesn't care about us. And the crowd's influence is temporary. Developing an image just to impress is a waste of time. So how do we begin to worry less about our image? Try fasting from things that feed the desire to control your image. Maybe there are things in your life that you need to get away from, stay away from, because they fuel our insecurity about our looks or what we wear or what others may think of us. Or there's activities you're involved in where the crowd is taking you in the wrong direction, away from what's most important. Maybe you need to fast from social media or the network news. And with that extra time from your fasting, spend a few more minutes each day in silence and in prayer, listening. Then, like Bartimaeus, maybe then we'll recognize the Lord more clearly. So, let's focus on three things. Number one, acknowledge God's presence. Son of God. 2, rely on prayer. Devote yourself to prayer. And 3, be persistent. Be specific in your prayer requests. When it comes to cultivating our image, play to an audience of one, the only one who matters, and that is Jesus. Make time for quiet, pray and listen, trust and surrender. Doing so will allow us to just let go. Then, like Bartimaeus, we will then experience God's power. Amen?